6:03 Wish TV is your local election headquarters. The top headline: Mike Braun is headed to the United States Senate.
The Republican defeated the incumbent Democrat Joe Donnelly in a race that turned out to not be as close as many of the pre-election polls had suggested. We begin our team coverage on the race with News 8's Brittany Lewis. We'll get reaction from Indiana's next senator. Brittany?
Good morning. Yeah, Senator-elect Mike Braun thanked a crowd of his supporters last night and all Hoosiers for helping him win, and he promised to not let anyone down. He also described the last 15 months of his life since he announced that he was running for the Senate, beating two established Republicans in the primary and campaigning 6 days a week for about 14 to 18 hours a day. He spent a significant amount of his own money while describing himself as an outside businessman who aligned himself with President Trump. Braun acknowledged the help he received from President Trump, who campaigned with him 4 times. The flip from a blue to a red Senate seat here in Indiana helped Republicans retain control of the Senate in Washington, D.C. Braun talked about what needs to happen when he gets there.
And what we're going to do is we're going to get more people from the real world that have had to do things that can fix things in a dysfunctional system. You're going to find that other people across this country are going to stick their neck out and take a risk and try to fix things in Washington so the system works for everyone. That's my goal.
Braun also discussed what he would like to see change in politics. He said it's gotten way too nasty on both sides, and he would like to see that change down the road. Now, Braun will be sworn in on January 3rd, so of course we'll continue to follow that. Drew and Scott.
All right, Brittany, thank you. Let's continue team coverage with News 8's Emily Kinzer.
Emily, you have reaction from the opposing side, Senator
Absolutely,
Donnelly.
and it certainly was not the outcome that the Donnelly campaign had hoped for. The night ended a lot sooner than they had expected. They anticipated a longer night and closer numbers in the election results. Donnelly conceded after it was evident he would not be reelected. He's held the Senate seat for 6 years and said he's so thankful for the time he's had to serve the people of Indiana.
I called Mike Braun to let him know I will do everything I can to make sure there's a smooth transition, because that's what the people of Indiana deserve. And I am so blessed to have my family here with me who put up with all of this for all these years.
His concession speech was around 6:30. He added that if anyone ever needed help with anything, to contact him. He says he considers himself to be the luckiest guy in the world. On both sides of the party lines, it was a message of unity after what we all know has been a pretty bitter last few months of negative campaign ads. You guys.
Emily, thank you. This morning to other top story, a change of power in Washington.
Democrats have taken enough seats to reclaim control of the House. Brenna Donnelly joins us, and you've been following that overnight. See some of the changes we could see in January.
That's right. Yeah, we will definitely see a new House Speaker for sure, but we'll also see a need for bipartisan support to pass anything through this Congress. This is the first time in 8 years the Democrats will have the majority. They needed 23 seats to gain it and are projected to pick up 32. Now, as for the new Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan did not seek re-election. Democrat Nancy Pelosi has already said she will run for the position, but there may be a challenger within the Democratic caucus against her. Now, that decision will be made the first day of the session, again, January the 3rd. Pelosi told the crowd last night that the new majority would also work to rein in the White House.
A Democratic Congress will work for solutions that bring us together, because we have all had enough of division. Democratic Congress will be led with transparency and openness so that the public can see what's happening and how it affects them, and that they can weigh in with the members of Congress and with the President of the United States. We will have accountability, and we will strive for bipartisanship.
Now, another big change we could see from the shift in power: more congressional oversight into the Trump administration. House Democrats will have more room now to launch investigations probing into things like Trump's finances. Now, the president has already called Nancy Pelosi last night to congratulate her on the win. That's the first step the president has taken since the election to begin working with a now Democratic majority House. Guys.
And Brenna, Indiana's House delegation will keep the same party split. All 7 incumbents on the ballot won re-election. They include Democrat Andre Carson. He'll be one of 2 Democrats as compared to 7 Indiana Republicans in the House. There will be 2 new faces among those Republicans. Greg Pence, the brother of Vice President Mike Pence, won the 6th district seat. The Vice President tweeted congratulations to his brother and says he looks forward to working with him. Pence replaces Luke Messer, who gave up his re-election chance for what turned out to be a failed bid for Senate. Republican Jim Baird will represent Indiana's 4th district. He replaces Todd Rokita, who also lost in the GOP Senate primary in May.
The Senate will stay in the hands of Republicans. In fact, they have added to their majority, including their win here in Indiana. The latest projection has Republicans picking up 4 seats for a total of 55 starting in January. In Texas, Republican Ted Cruz will keep his Senate seat. He beat Democrat Beto O'Rourke. The race was one of the most expensive in the country. Cruz talked about the tone of the campaign.
We saw an assault that was unprecedented. We saw a $100 million race with Hollywood coming in against the state, with the national media coming in against the state. But all the money in the world was no match for the good people of Texas and the hardworking men and women across our state.
Ted Cruz rose to national prominence in 2016 when he ran for president. Florida Governor Rick Scott will be the state's next U.S. Senator. He beat incumbent Democrat Bill Nelson in a seat Democrats had hoped to keep. Mitt Romney has won his Senate race in Utah. Romney also served 4 years as the governor of Massachusetts. He talked to supporters about what the win means.
I believe it's an affirmation that regardless of one's gender or ethnicity or sexual orientation or race or place of birth, that we are all equal, not only in the eyes of God, but also in the respect and dignity we are due from government and from our fellow Americans.
Romney takes the place of Republican Senator Orrin Hatch, who did not seek re-election.